My phone real quick. Oh yeah, we are live. Welcome everyone to the ViaMonstra Academy office hours. This is where you can ask questions every Wednesday on ConfigMgr, MDT, Intune, imaging, Windows, and pretty much most things related to Microsoft infrastructure. My name is Jan, and I'll be your host for the next hour. And with that being said, let the questions begin. All right, welcome back. Let me go ahead and switch over to the demo environment here. There is a question here in the Zoom call already, so I will get to that one in just a little bit. I'm also going to bring out the chat screen so you have a chance to see questions coming in on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Trying to monitor that one here. You can also submit questions here in the Zoom meeting. If you don't have access, this is simply you go to the Academy site, enroll in it, and you will have access to it. These events are free for the community, so there is no cost connected to it. And once logged in, you will also see previous recordings and links, etc., that have been shared or sharing in previous events here. So, all right, back to the questions. The question here in the Zoom call is regarding file associations in Windows 10, I'm assuming. Basically, can I have two different XMLs defining associations? I don't know. I've only used one. I know that Jürgen has spent a lot of time writing about those scenarios. So if you go to ccmexec.com and you search for associations, and try to spell it at least somewhat correct. There's one for Windows 11, some examples there and work around. So maybe that could be of interest. I'll put that link in the chat for you guys. Jürgen has been writing a lot on typical customizations through imaging. But I have not tried doing it with multiple XML files. If anyone in the community is tuning into this and happen to know, feel free to put in the comment in the chat. I'll be happy to relay that information. But it's definitely something I could take back as a homework and try to figure out until next Wednesday, if that's possible somehow. I'm gonna make a little note about that. And the door blew open. Interesting. Have a bit of a storm here outside Chicago. It's rainy and windy, and office door just blew up. So that was interesting. What can possibly go wrong in a live event? XML files, multiple file association. I'm so old, so I'm allowed to use pen and paper. I still love it. Still read books too. The kind where you actually flip the pages in. That's pretty cool. All right. Uh, I see David Segura says hello from Houston. Hello back, David. Thank you for joining us here on the YouTube stream. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to the phone call, we do stream to LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. But every platform but Twitter currently offer live replies uh, during the stream. So I'm able to reply to everything but that, basically. All right. Any other questions? Anything at all? Be happy to answer. While we are waiting for more questions to come in, can mention that the Q2 Academy is going in full swing and up for next month. We have our Windows 10 Performance mini course. That one is free for the community. So that one kicks off right after MMS, May 12th. And we also have a repeat of Mr. Richard Hicks' Always On VPN session that he did back in February. He's going to do a repeat on that one on June 14. So if you haven't seen or attended any of these before, excellent source of information. Richard, for example, is an absolute legend. Everything related to Always On VPN. In fact, he even wrote a book about it that kind of says a little bit on the skill level right there. Okay. Any questions at all? Well, there have been some announcements recently. For those of you paying attention on Twitter, you noticed that ConfigMgr 2020-03 was just released. And with that, we got dark mode. So that's pretty cool, something I want to try out as soon as I get it upgraded here in the lab. Haven't had that time yet, but hopefully this weekend it will. Let's see. There was a question coming in here in the call. What's the easiest way to export all Google Chrome policy settings and apply them to Microsoft Chromium-based Edge browser? Oh, I have not done that. The only one I can think of that have done it is Rory. Let's see if I can find his Twitter alias real quick. Putting him on the spot right now, but this gentleman knows a lot about Chromium and settings and extensions and whatnot. So maybe try to ping him on Twitter and see if you get a good reply. If he yells at you, you can always tell him I sent you and he can yell at me instead. That's a pretty good deal right there. Any other questions? Right. Can certainly share some news information while we're waiting for questions to come in. Just bringing up some links here. All right, so there is a question coming in. What's the easiest way in ConfigMgr to export all configuration items and configuration baselines from one ConfigMgr environment to another? Basically, export import of all those settings. There are some PowerShell scripts available that does that. Believe it was Nikolai who wrote them back in the days. I'll double check that. I might actually have some of them here. No, I was working on it for a while. Let's see. Migrating reports. Collections. I wonder. A lot of stuff around. Oh, that was queries that I was working on there. That was also a hard one to export queries by container the folder structure, because the CM command I didn't do that. That was a lot of work. See if I can find them real quick. Yeah, export CM baseline, that's the one. All right. This one should do it. The export equivalent and the import equivalent. So basically the command line, or sorry, the PowerShell version of what you do in the console. If I need to move a baseline and its item, I will simply go down here. If I have a baseline I want to export, for example, our baseline for a branch cache tuner, it's not in this tenant, but I have it maybe in this server. I have a lot of different servers. Yeah, here's a tuner. I will simply go and export that one, create a zip file with it or a cab file, and I can import that in another environment. And these are what those commandlets are doing as well. So that should get you going in terms of getting those in and out of different environments. Some of the objects that you have in ConfigMgr, I'm not entirely sure if baselines are part of it, but you can connect a ConfigMgr site server to another site server that are both standalone as long as the site name is different. This was how you migrated stuff back in the days, but you can actually point the ConfigMgr to another server and import objects from that environment into this one. So this is commonly used if you say have a QA environment, you want to publish something from there into production. So that could also be an option. Maybe a little bit more work to set up just for migrating a few baselines back and forth, but for large scale stuff, for a more ongoing publishing, this is a good option as well. So I hope that answered the question. Other question coming in here in the call. What's the best way in MDT to make Edge be my default browser? So that basically comes down to either applying group policy that applies the settings that you need, or have the task sequence put down an XML file during deployment so that it's being picked up by the user. Usually I have best success with policy settings like this, but I've seen a lot of folks basically copying down templates as part of their imaging. A good source of inspiration is our dear friend Gary Block. For those of you that are in the ConfigMgr community, his work is well known. Garytown in his blog. He's done a lot of work for Recast Software, their community efforts these days. And his task sequence collection is pretty dang good. And it's been updated a few times here and there, but almost 10,000 downloads of this version here. But this is a series of sequences that you can import in your ConfigMgr environment. And some of these sequences are, and I actually have it here, I believe. Yeah, get it down. Some of these sequences are just for reference. They're not supposed to be run as a sequence, but they're more there as a module with common customizations where you can basically just open that sequence and copy and paste the stuff that you want. So for example, here was a office handler of sorts, a little script that figured that one out, or here was one to disable the first edge run. But you can often find some useful information in these sequences that you can just copy and paste and use in your environment. So if you haven't looked at these, you might find something useful there as well. And just because these are ConfigMgr sequences, it doesn't mean you cannot use them with MDT. It's just that MDT won't import them. So if you spin up the ConfigMgr site server and import them here, you can of course simply take these actions here because this command line will run equally fine through an MDT sequence versus a ConfigMgr sequence. It's just a run command line action. And many of these scripts and whatnot that comes with these sequence exports, there's a bunch of packages and cleanup scripts and whatnot, they will work fine in MDT as well. So hopefully that. All right, let's see. There is a question coming in on YouTube here. On MDT, what's the best practices with drivers since some models share similar hardware drivers? I'm a big fan of, even if you have a lot of models that are sharing the same drivers, to actually deal with them as separate models. In MDT, even if I have a folder structure here with a few drivers for, well, some models apparently, even if the same driver is shown up in different folders here, it's a single instance stored behind the scenes. Because this folder structure that you see here, it's just a virtual label, a virtual directory basically. The out-of-box drivers in the file system actually looks like this. Out-of-box drivers. So it's sorted by class, not by model. And MDT simply keeps track of it. So say that we import 40 models that their source is 60 gigs in size. You'll rarely find that the MDT store is going to be more than 20, 25, because among those 60 gigs of drivers, you will find that a lot of them are the same. So MDT is pretty good that way in doing this, so not too much to worry about. If you want a little bit of reading, I do have an older post that I put together quite a while ago. MDT, so this was back in 2013, so 9 years ago. Still going strong, boot image drivers, different options available, total chaos, not recommended. This one, also not recommended. This option here, definitely recommended. Per model approach, and it doesn't matter if you have 5 models or 50, I recommend this either way. So I'll be happy to put that link in the chat for you. It's what I call a classic blog post by now. Let's see. Where did my chat go? Here. And as I mentioned earlier, all these links you will find from every office hours if you simply go to the Academy site. and locate office hours, and they will be here once you log in. And this is also where we keep all the recording archives as well, if you want to access them from here. All right. Question coming in from Facebook. It's Matt asking, I have a script that, let's see here. Okay, basically the scenario is I have a script, it does what it's supposed to do. I want to add some additional logging. How can I do that? Well, you can do logging as simple or as complicated as it can be. As a good start, you can take, let's see what I have here. I can steal. This one here, a script that checks branch cache settings. There is a one-liner in the beginning where I'm telling it where my log file is. There is a tiny little function here that is responsible for logging, adding in a timestamp, and then it writing information every time I do a write log. So basically, if I set the log file, if I run the function, I can delete the log file if it exists. Then I can write something to the log file, and then I can open up that log file. Let's see, BC Tuner main was the name of it. BC Tuner main, updated about right now, and it has that single line in it. This is like the simplest of logging, where you simply add in your own little function to do it. If you want to be a little more advanced, you will start to put logging functions together that formats the log file for Trace directly, because then you can also add in what component it was, the severity, etc., warning error, and what all the stuff. And I've seen quite many of those over the years. We have one here on Friends of MDT. This is where we have the PowerShell deployment kit, because MDT is using the same format for logging as ConfigMgr. So one of the modules that you can download from here, I believe is in the utility module. That one contains logging module, actually 4 functions for logging that you can use in your PowerShell scripts. Adam, I remember, wrote something back in the days. Adam, SCCM Trace logging module. Yeah, here we go. Reading and creating ConfigMgr log files with PowerShell. Good stuff. And I have seen pretty much anything in between in terms of creating log functions for this. Sometimes easy goes a long way. I'm just going to post that link in the chat here real quick so we get it added to the site later. To just enable transcript. That's something I've been using for install wrappers, where I need to get something going fairly quickly. So if I go to this folder here, and where did I put that one? Here. Just a basic install wrapper does have a logging function, but I'm also just doing a start transcript. And when I'm done with everything I needed to do, I stop the transcript. And everything that was supposed to be shown on the screen is now in that log file, and hopefully that can help me troubleshoot things when needed. So you can combine. Some organizations I worked with, they have a regular log file, and then they enable transcript when they throw a debug switch to it or something, or a verbose switch. Then they enable this. So I hope that answered the question. Let's see, what else? Question here in the Zoom call regarding ConfigMgr reports, both Power BI as well as traditional RDL reporting files. but you don't have Power BI reporting service set up. That's always been the Achilles heel of the native ConfigMgr integration, that it required a Power BI server to be able to use it there. But you have always been able to use the free Power BI desktop and even the paid Power BI desktop that you get as part of your enterprise agreements to work with the content that you have in the ConfigMgr database. There are many examples of that. For example, if you go to MS Endpoint Manager and you search for Jordan's little dashboard that he put together for tracking OSD stuff. So this is a Power BI dashboard that taps into ConfigMgr data, but it's using the regular Power BI desktop to do so. So that works just fine. I recently read, I wonder if that was in the preview or it was in 2203, that they were making some changes to support the Power BI desktop also for the native integration that you have here in the ConfigMgr console. So this one here that previously required a server, I wonder if they didn't start to support. I need to look that up real quick. Sometimes tweets, they just pass by real quick, but SCCM Power BI Desktop 2203. Yeah, it looks like 2203 does add in support for Power BI Desktop. I haven't tried this. This release is just a few days old. It was released Friday. But yeah, so hopefully that can answer the question a little bit. Untested, but looks kind of promising. I'll put that link in the chat for you guys. Something to deploy in your labs this upcoming weekend. Still an early release, you have to opt in for it, but in a lab environment, I don't really hesitate too much to bring in early releases, and then I validate them there for a month or two, and then it goes into production. So hope that helped. Security recommendations that we need to, let's see, there was a question regarding security and ConfigMgr Client Push versus network access account, basically so those account doesn't get compromised. The Client Push account, you can obviously skip using. You don't have to do Client Push. You can install clients, for example, using Jason Sandy's excellent startup script. Not entirely sure why he insists on keeping his startup script in the tools menu, but that's another story. But that's just an amazing way to install the client without having to use a client push account. The network access account you can ditch completely by simply enabling enhanced HTTP. So in here in the sites, in properties, in communication security, this little checkbox here is the equivalent of enhanced HTTP. And when that is enabled, you don't need to use the network access account for imaging anymore. The rare exception is if you're using a multicast, don't do that. Use peer-to-peer instead. It's easier, better, faster, pick one. And it doesn't require network access accounts. Mr. Sander and Kim Uppalfens have been speaking about this for a very long time. Count our evil, I believe is the post. Here we go. It simply turns out with a little bit of PowerShell, if you have used a network access account, that actually is left behind. It's a security risk. So even if you lock down the account, I mean, I don't recommend using it. But here is a good read if you want to get a little bit of insights on why that is. But since enhanced HTTP came back in 2-3 years ago, you don't really need it anymore. The ConfigMgr folks have updated their documentation on it also. You can find it. ConfigMgr docs is a good search term. Here we go. Here are all the accounts, network access, and basically here. As long as you are on enhanced VHTTP or for that matter a full-blown PKI, you can get the content without the need for a network access account, including OSD. So good stuff. Put that link in the chat as well, so you guys have it. Yeah, that would be recommendations. And whatever you guys do, don't start to combine different accounts in ConfigMgr, like combining a network access account with a client push account. Because suddenly you now have an account that is also admin on every workstation. That's not really the ideal scenario at all. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Antonio's asking on YouTube, what's the best guide to migrate 2103? Basically changing the server OS. I have a very strong opinion about how to do that. In general, it involves Mr. Jason, once again, Jason Sandys. So back to his blog. Because if you go to his blog and you search for the keyword recovery here, it will take you through a complete ConfigMgr site backup and restore. I prefer to use this when I need to upgrade the OS of the site server. I know that Microsoft supports that you do in-place upgrade of the OS. So technically you could do a 2012 R2 upgrade to the next version, whatever. But what I've learned over the years is that even though the upgrade goes smooth, for example, when you do it, it could very well be that 2 years down the road, you try to do something and it breaks. Just because the very fact that you 2 years back did an in-place upgrade. I prefer to take a backup of the things I have, shut it down, spin up a new VM, same name, similar disk layout. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but with a new version of the OS, like a 2019 or 2022, etc., and restore the backup to it. Sure, it may take maybe an hour or two longer to do, but it's a fairly straightforward process and it's a good practice anyway. But it guarantees that that server is actually a clean and pristine installation. So that's how I recommend upgrading OSs, and I've probably done it like 50 times now. My record is 3 in a week, so that was fun. But yeah. And whatever you guys do, if you try to do a scenario like this, even though you're not technically required to back up the content library, please do. It's going to speed up the restore a lot. If ConfigMgr you have to rebuild it, it's going to take it's going to be a long day for you. And then you're going to have a version bump, and it's going to be an even longer day to get that content out there. Sidebar. So yeah, follow-up comment there, new VM, absolute new VM, backup restore. That's what I recommend. It's not the only way, but that's what I like to use for it. All right, let's see what else we have. Checking the Q&A here. Anything coming in? Well, I can share this link. It's pretty fun. Microsoft announced this one recently. Windows Autopatch, different way to apply patches. It says here that it will be released this summer. Free as long as you have some sort of enterprise agreement here. But you can think of this basically as some sort of like a managed patch service kind of deal where you configure thresholds, and when they are fulfilled, they will be upgraded from this or deploy this. There was an event just 2 weeks ago that Microsoft did where they talked a bit more about this. But I'll put this one in the chat for you together with this one here. I did showcase that event last Wednesday, but let's see if I can find it again. And here is the video of it. If you haven't seen this one, it could be worth spending some time on also. Any other questions? We still have a whopping 22 minutes to our disposal. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. I can see that my partner, Andrew Johnson, is the one is partner in crime for all the Intune and ConfigMgr courses here on the Academy. So if you have any questions for him, I'm pretty sure he'll chime in as well. I love Andrew, by the way. All right, any questions at all? I guess everyone is busy with dealing with Patch Tuesday. It's kind of that day of the month or that time of the month right now. It's always fun. I did see David updated his module yesterday, so for those of you using OSD Builder and other components using that OSD SUS module, it's now ready for April 2022. I think I retweeted his announcement at some point. Or him commenting on the YouTube feed earlier, so I know he's alive out there. Yeah, here is the tweet. Let me get to that link. Yep, indeed updated. 1507. I really hope you guys don't have machines running 1507 still. That'll make me a little bit sad. Put that in the chat and I says update. So, question coming in, what's the best blog to troubleshoot Microsoft Defender onboarding issues? I don't know. I haven't really seen any good blogs on that topic. It doesn't mean they don't exist. I just don't have it on the top of my head available. Try to remember what I have seen though. A post just recently about setting it up, at least that looked promising. How my searching skills goes. No, I only find some older blog posts from, let's see what that was. Now more like step-by-step guidance, not so much focus on troubleshooting. A quick search is release basically reveals the Microsoft resources, the most popular ones. So basically this one here drives through the different processes and whatnot. The thing is, Microsoft has been increasingly better in providing good troubleshooting guidance, not just for Intune or ConfigMgr, but also for other areas where they have a sort of a scenario-based approach, step by step, going through log files, what you can expect and whatnot. So maybe this one can be a bit useful for you. Sometimes going back to the mothership is not an entirely bad idea, searching for information. If anyone happen to know a fantastic resource for onboarding Microsoft Defender, feel free to put that in the chat here or just comment on the feeds. And yeah, be happy to share it. Any other questions? Dave is asking how can we create user-based collections or department-based user collections in ConfigMgr if we don't have a unique AD attribute that determines the user's department. Well, if the, you always have the option of, let's see, bring up that discovery method real quick. You can definitely borrow other attributes if the one you want to use is not available. For example, I've seen this being used quite a bit to put in additional info that is used for something else. You can have script that parse and creates things based on that or something, but not something I have done. But yeah, maybe something like that. Basically, the goal here is to deploy apps to departments, the user's department, not necessarily the machine department. As scripts is the only thing I can come up with if you don't have that AD attribute populated, because that's how we get that discovery data in or that information in. Anyone have an idea? Feel free to share. Be happy to reshare that information. I actually stumbled across a blog post from Timmy with CT Global. It kind of falls back to needing to have that attribute. I can share the link at least. It seems interesting enough. So Timmy Anderson, he's on Twitter as well, but this is just how to create collections based on data department, but using PowerShell to do it. So maybe that can help. Put that in the chat for you. All right. Any other questions? Was a question regarding new versions of MDT. I haven't heard anything about an update to MDT, which makes me a little bit sad because it's been a fantastic friends over the years. Luckily, it still works, even with Windows 11, but it would have been nice to see some additional love in terms of better support for Windows 11 in the product, but so far I have seen nothing. Any development related to MDT these days is basically there are two places where it happens. It is our Friends of MDT project that we have on GitHub that extends MDT with functionality it didn't have before, and this is basically the only way to get changes in right now that extends functionality. In this case, peer-to-peer support and cloud imaging support, HTTPS deployment, branch cache, and all that good stuff. David, I know, has been working with, is it Gary or Adam? I forgot which. Probably Gary. To extend his cloud solutions with MDT as well. Pretty sure they would to announce that on MMS in just 2 weeks and then make it available for everybody else. See if I can find that tweet. Or if David hear me, he can actually post me that link and I can share it. I think it's available just yet, but I'm going to take a quick look. And here we go. It was scary. This tweet here, where using MDT sequences through OSD Cloud. So that's something I'm really interested to dive into when that becomes available. So hoping for a release in just 2 weeks. We'll see if that's the case. One can hope. All right. There's a question here in the Zoom call. Is there any automated way in ConfigMgr can perform the entire discovery and provide us with a report if devices are not so basically a report that compares found objects, whether they have an agent or not on them. Or like doing a full discovery and then compare it to a report. I haven't seen a ready-made report to exact that scenario, but it sounds like something that is quite doable because you can, of course, force a full discovery, get that information, and compare it to machines that doesn't have the agent. That should be doable. So maybe a scheduled task that runs that script or triggers that thing, something like that. The cool thing about ConfigMgr in general, there is usually nothing that's impossible. It's a very open platform. So if you don't mind a little bit of scripting or custom reports and whatnot, you can usually achieve pretty much anything you want. And ConfigMgr, unlike Intune, has, as you guys probably know, tons of ready-made reports, almost 500 by default that you can tap into and use. So that's, of course, powerful. But yeah, I haven't seen anything for that specific question that you asked there, unfortunately. And David just confirmed that he will be releasing it at MMS. Excellent. Thank you. Right, any other questions? There are still 7 more minutes. A Wednesday afternoon. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in. Thank you much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, for asking questions. And I hope to see you next Wednesday. Thank you for now. Have a good one.